All right, 1 second. Uh, all right, welcome on to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome on to this Q&A. A few questions came in. One, and it's going to lead to a much bigger question, but the question was, let's say person wants to move to Israel and they work for a company. Let's say, even better, they work for a company online. Yeah, they work for a company online. Company does not want them, will not allow them to move. In other words, they're saying that you can't live there. Now, I got an issue with taxation. Anyway, right? You have taxation in the States, even if you live here, if that's where your main income comes from, doesn't matter, right? But nonetheless, the question is, if that is the case and they won't let you move, can you use a VPN? Right? Can you use a VPN that looks like you're in America? Right? While you're in Israel. Is that considered stealing? That's the first question. Second question is, well, we're in exile anyway. And because we're in exile, Jews are in exile. And there's corrupt government here and and all that. Does that matter? In other words, they're part of the Erev, the mixed multitude. Does that matter? Does that matter that I can do almost whatever I want? Is there a status of dina d'malchus dina? Which means, is there a status of the law of the land? Does law of the land apply in Israel or not? So let's deal with that first, because that's really part of the bigger question. And that is law of the land, it's a difference of opinion. The Gemara in the Dharm speaks about it, whether the land of Israel is subject to law of the land. So we have a difference of opinion. We have a major difference of opinion. And there'll be a lot of ramifications, meaning if there's no law of the land, let's say there's no status of law of the land in Israel, then in theory, I can do what I want here. I can smuggle stuff, things in, as long as you don't get caught. There's a whole question. People would bring in, electronic stuff, not to sell, but to use for themselves, because electronics were taxed up the gazoo for years. And now, that's not the case. So when you go through customs, either you walk through customs with things to declare or with things not to declare. Now, they randomly can check you, even if you go into the line where you're not declaring anything. So really, they could check you. Right? Now, what happens if you get caught? You didn't declare it. So that would seemingly, so it's against the law. 100% against the law. Right? You'd have to declare it. You can say whatever you want about, it's still going according to British law here, whatever, but you could claim that doesn't matter. We don't hold about, the law of the land. Doesn't really matter. So if you get caught, you get caught. Right? So you pay a fine or whatever. But then you get the problem of Chil Hashem, desecration of God's name. You can say, but it doesn't matter. The law of the land doesn't apply. Right? So if the law of the land doesn't apply, what's the big deal? Then it shouldn't matter. Right? Then it shouldn't matter even if you get caught. It shouldn't matter. So there's a big discussion, very, very big discussion about this. Some will say you don't do anything that you have a potential liability of getting caught. If there's any way a person may get caught, then you're not allowed to do it. Then it'd be forbidden to do it. Some would say a middle position. If it's, I wouldn't say guaranteed, but somewhere in the middle, that if it's possible, right? Not 100%, person will get caught. Let's say a small percentage might get caught, right? There's a probability. Okay. So some would say that if there's a small chance, then it's not a problem. And others would say you can't do it at all, right? It's either you can't do it at all, or it's 100% permissible. Why is it 100% permissible? Because no law of the land. 100% is no law of the land. Now, so you basically got three opinions, right? One is totally forbidden, one's totally permissible, and there's a position in the middle. It depends on the odds. If there's not a great chance you're going to get caught, again, it's random. Now you could say, well, maybe while you're going through customs, who do they go after first? Right? Who do they go after first? Religious people, right? They're going to say, oh, it's probably hiding something, right? But it's random, right? That's not the case. But it's totally random. So you got thousands and tens of thousands of people, coming through customs. And a lot of times you have, 3, 4, 5, 6 planes coming in at the same time. So you got hundreds of people coming in, right? You got hundreds of people leaving. So very good. They don't declare anything, the papers they fill in, they don't declare anything. Very good. They go in the line where they're not declaring anything. Okay. Now the chances of getting stopped realistically are pretty slim. Right? It's pretty slim. Even so, some rabbinical authorities would say you get caught, it's a chil Hashem. It's desecration of God's name. Right? 100% is a very strong opinion to say it's not worth taking the chance. On the other hand, if it's really a small possibility, and again, it's random, and it's randomly small that you're going to get, again, it's Murphy's Law, right? Doesn't matter, you look religious or not, they can stop you anyway. It could be by body language, other things, doesn't matter, they could stop you, but it's random. So I would say the chances of getting caught are slim. They are slim, right? So a person would say, okay, so if they're slim, then it should be all right. Right? Then it should be okay. Others would say there's a mitzvah to do whatever you can. I hope no one in the government's listening here. There's a mitzvah to do whatever you can to hide money from the government. Because they're using it for terrible things anyway. Yeah. Right? And to, hide money from, paying taxes or whatever, because you know where taxes go. To go to all kinds of terrible things. Now, a person will say, on the other hand, you got to pay taxes. Okay. But it's not forbidden to pay taxes, regardless of where the money goes. That's not your calculation. Your calculation is, they're going to use it for, LGBTQ stuff, and they're going to use it for other things, and who knows what. And you're going to say that, your money's directly going to that. You're not telling them to give it to them. Listen, you have to give money to the municipality. Right? You got to pay taxes. Right? Probably one of the few places here, even if you don't own your apartment or house, you pay the taxes. Right? You pay tax. Okay. So you're gonna say. So a person will say, okay, that money will go to build soccer stadiums, who knows what, other things that we don't approve of. So you're gonna say you're over total prohibition giving this money to garbage. So therefore it's a mitzvah to hide it. Some people say that. Some people would say it's an absolute mitzvah to hide money from them. And declare, you declare whatever you want, right? But you don't have to be honest, because they're not honest, right? Because they're totally crooked, which is true. It's definitely true. Why do you think there's so many audits by the tax authority here? Because they know people are hiding money. They know that because, tax bracket's very high, one of the highest places. right? That tax bracket is very high, right? So people know, like, they know probably you're hiding money, right? So there is an opinion to say you hide your money, you don't declare what you're supposed to declare. You declare a lot less, right? You declare a lot less. And they'll say there's a big mitzvah to do that because of everything they do, and there's no law of the land. There's no law of the land that applies. So they'll say that's okay. Others would say, you have a business here, whatever. You just pay whatever you pay. Or, if you're making a lot of money, you get killed, right? So, you figure out loopholes, what to do that are, that are legal, whatever the case is. You want to be legal, you don't want to get caught doing anything wrong. But at the same time, at the same time, they'll say, no, you don't play games. You don't play games even if there's no law of the land. See, when an Orthodox Jew gets caught, it's like man bites dog. See, if dog bites man, nobody cares. But that's normal, But we're out there also, so we can get caught doing things, God forbid. So they'll say, oh, what do you call it? Man bites dog, that's a story. So an Orthodox Jew gets caught for corruption, gets caught for, I don't know, money laundering, fraud, other things. That's worse because it's not as common. It's more common today, but still, in the bigger scheme of things, not as common. So if a person gets caught, worse. An Orthodox Jew gets caught, it's worse. So the question here, so now that's the question of the law of the land. Now, if you're living in the States, you can't say the law of the land doesn't apply. Or anywhere else, doesn't matter. You can't say the law of the land doesn't apply. The law of the land applies. Now, what if it's corrupt? What if the law of the land, I've spoken about this in length, but just in short, if the law of the land is something that goes against Torah, then you got to stand up for Torah. The law of the land bars circumcision. Let's say like, in Russia, way back, I shouldn't say way back, it's not so far back. They banned circumcision. Yeah. So they did whatever they could to make sure they could do it. Because the law of the land's corrupt. Right? There's an absolute mitzvah. There's an absolute mitzvah that's what you got to do. Right? So if that's what you got to do. Right? So if that's what you got to do, you have no choice. Right? So you have no choice. So now, could be, KGB, or as we would say here in Israel, the KJB, right, would come and look, they're going to try and see what people are doing or whatever. Yeah, it could put your life in danger. But that's a mitzvah you have to do. That is a mitzvah you have to do. No matter what the law of the land says. You still have to do it. You got to figure out a way how you're going to do it where, you're not going to get caught and, whatever. Even if you have to risk your life, there are plenty of people who risk their lives to do it. To do it. So if it goes against what Torah says, then there's a mitzvah not to listen to them. Now the question is how far. That's the question. But in general, if it goes against Torah, then depending, what it is, if it's something that 100% you're obligated to do, then it's a different issue. Because, in the time of the Greeks, coming up to Hanukkah, the time of the Greeks, so they also made terrible decrees. But their decrees were not to destroy Judaism. That wasn't the point. They made terrible decrees. Their decrees were made to make the Jews be more like them. By Haman, totally different. He wanted to totally annihilate the Jews. Same thing. Right? May they be blotted out, may rot wherever he is. Same thing. Made all kinds of decrees against the Jews. Yeah? In order to not just to make it hard, to kill them. And he wrote about it. Everyone thought he was crazy, but okay. He wrote about it, said exactly what he was going to do. Right? Mein Kampf and translated, I don't even know how many languages. Yeah. Nonetheless, he had a whole plan. He had a whole plan. Now, most people don't know. Just a side point. Most people don't know that book, what was it based on? Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Right? Martin Luther, famous for founding the Protestant movement, yeah. Rabid anti-Semite. So where did Hitler get his stuff from? From him. That's where he got it. So, in a place like that, you can't live like a Jew. What did a lot of people do in Russia? They tried to leave, try to get out, couldn't live there, right? A lot of places in Europe couldn't live there. The decrees were horrific. Horrific. You got this war going on between, Russia and Ukraine. Plenty of blood spilled, Jewish blood spilled by both of them. Whoever kills the other the most, great. Ukraine's the underdog, whatever. We don't look at it that way. Yeah, they have so much blood, Jewish blood on their hands. Russia, no different. I know a few people here, here in Israel came here originally. One went to America and then came here, and then someone came here, straight, as a teenager, came here. So basically, both said the exact same thing, and that Ukraine, if they burn the place down and everybody burns with it, going to happen to nicer people. Rabid anti-Semite. Made life extremely difficult for Jews. So I said many times, one time, I was on a certain show and people, obviously didn't like, to hear that. So it was like one of the only shows, that I had, they had to take down because I got so much hate, hate from it. So like I said a lot worse things. You can imagine like that, I got so much hate from that, not from other things that came out of my mouth. But okay. Right. But but both made it impossible for Jews to live there. Impossible. So a lot of Jews just got out. Forget about World War II. They left. They couldn't stay there. Made it impossible. Russians were busy running after rabbis, sending people to Siberia. You couldn't practice Judaism. Just wasn't possible. So whatever happens in both countries, as long as Jews aren't affected and the rest of the Jews should get out, then whatever. Of Ukraine, whatever it is, but both have serious amount of Jewish blood on their hands. Serious amount of Jewish blood on their hands. So if a country makes it so impossible, they make it so impossible for you to live there, you got to leave. You can't stay there. You have to defy them because you got to keep Torah and mitzvahs. What are you going to do? So you have to leave, and that's what a lot of people did. They left. They would have loved to have stayed, but when you're being hounded and chased and whatever, all kinds of pogroms and different things, there's no point. Point is, at some point to stay, unless you can't leave. And a person's elderly, you got elderly parents, they can't leave, whatever. Then the person might be stuck. In any case, the question here is, law of the land. Right? Now, the law of the land states, in this case, the law of the land, or the law of the company, let's say, says you can't work in this country. We don't allow you to work in this country. Now, if they don't allow you to work in this country, then a person's going to say, okay, I'm going to use my brain here. I got a great way out. Perfect way out. They'll never know I left. I go to Israel anyway. I have my own VPN, right? I have a VPN. They won't trace me. They absolutely won't trace me. Right? Beautiful. So what's the problem? What's the problem? You're lying. That's the problem. You're totally lying. But we're in exile. And even what goes on here goes against a lot what the Torah says. So that means it's permissible to lie and steal and cheat. Even people don't believe in the state. My Rabbi and others, they live here, okay. They don't get benefit. Their schools don't take money from the government. Yeah. Even he would say in such a case, don't you know, there's a mitzvah in the Torah. You know what the mitzvah in the Torah is? The mitzvah in the Torah is don't steal. But you don't believe in the state. You believe it's totally corrupt and all this and all that. And everything the Zionists have done over the years. Hope no Zionists are listening to this. Yeah? You know what they've done. Very good. So what? Doesn't mean you're allowed to lie. And if you get caught, it's worse. Worse. So I mentioned one a few years back, government wanted to add secular things into the curriculum of religious schools. Right? So everyone's up in arms. Says they have no rights. You're going to put in secular things and whatever, teach all kinds of things that are against Torah. So everyone's up in arms. So, so my Rabbi came out with a whole big thing, saying, I got to protest this and whatever. I said, but they're taking money from the government. There's a Hebrew expression, bala mea, bala dea. If you have 100, then, if you're the one with the money, so you're the one in charge, right? You're the one with power. I said, they're taking money from the government. If they're taking money from the government, it's their own fault. So let them raise the money. I'm not saying it's easy. Let them raise the money. If they're taking money from the government, they're getting benefit, right? If they're getting benefit, then the government has a right to say, right? Then they have a right to say what should be in the curriculum. They're giving you money. Serious money. Yeah. They're giving you money to survive. So my Rabbi said, you're right. But you still have to protest. They don't have a right to do that. I said, but they're taking money. He said, you're right, but it doesn't matter. The fact that they want to put their crazy ideas into our schools, regardless of whether they're taking money or not, you have to protest it. You have to protest it. Even if you're taking money. So the simple answer is you're defrauding the company. Companies in America, right? Doesn't matter where they are, right? Essentially, unless they're in Israel, and that's a different issue, right? Whether you hold there's the law of the land or not. But if they're in the States, it's law of the land. Law of the land states for this company, you cannot work outside. You can't work outside the States in this country. You can't work in Israel. We don't allow you to work in Israel. Someone comes up with a great idea. I use a VPN. They'll never know I'm there. So, as my Rabbi would say, there's a mitzvah in the Torah, midvar sheker tirchak. Can't lie. Not allowed to lie. He said people forget that. They think, just because we don't hold the law of the land, I can do whatever I want. That's not true. That's not true. He said, but if you're going to do something, and it is against the law, right, especially here, then you better, not get caught. Because if you get caught, that is desecration of God's name. That is a chil Hashem. So the simple answer is, so then the person said, but it's mitzvah to live here, which is a whole discussion also. So there's a mitzvah to live here, so why can't why can't you do that? And it's better to live here and all this and all that. Okay, very good. There's only one problem. Yeah, there's a Talmudic dictum. What's a Talmudic dictum? Talmudic dictum says mitzvah ba'avera. In other words, if a person took a lulav and they stole it from someone, and they come to synagogue and they're shaking it like this and they're shaking it like that, and they have all the kavanas, they have all the intention of Kabbalah. Guess what? They don't get any mitzvah. The blessing in vain, blessings in vain, saying God's name in vain, all kinds of things. But they think they're doing a great mitzvah. What's the problem? They stole a lulav. Doesn't belong to them. If it doesn't belong to them, you can't use it. They're not doing a mitzvah. You're transgressing at the exact same time. So there's no mitzvah. There you're going to say, I can have great intention. It's going to make life easier. I can pray with a minion easier. All these great things coming here in the land. Beautiful. But then the money you get is all tainted because you stole from the government or the company or whatever. And you're lying. So here you think you're the biggest righteous person in the world. You get upstairs, you stink to high heaven. Yeah. So answer would be that even if you don't hold of the law of the land here, If you want to hold that, that's okay. Definitely have who to rely on. But at the same time, there's law of the land in the States or in Europe or other places. And that's not something you can do. That 100% is, you can't do that. That's lying. Because if you would ask them straight out, okay, I want to go work in Israel. Yeah, you work online anyway, it doesn't matter. You work remote. Yeah, and they say no. And they say no. So they come up with this great idea, I'll lie. How is that permissible? Oh, the Zionists do this and the Zionists do that and they do the other thing. Oh, so what? You're living in the land. What you do according to taxes, whatever, that's your problem. But your money's coming from the States. Your money's coming from a land where law of the land matters. In other words, the big mitzvah to come live in the land does not uproot the fact that you're a liar and you stink the high heaven in what you're doing. Doesn't matter what the government does. Doesn't matter if the mixed multitude, the Arabs in charge. Doesn't matter. If you were to tell me you wouldn't be allowed, a person lived in Israel, and whatever it is, you're not allowed to do here. Then you have a question whether the law of the land applies. And if the law, and if it does apply, then you better not get caught. Because if you get caught, it's worse. 100% worse. So, the mitzvah of being in Israel, even a person want to come to convert and live a Jewish life, and it's much easier to do it here than other places, right? In a lot of ways. Okay. It doesn't uproot the fact that you're stealing and you're lying. Doesn't uproot that. Totally doesn't uproot that. If you were in the States and they say, listen, you live in the state, I don't know, you live in Georgia. Very good. You live in the state of Georgia. Yeah. And your job doesn't allow people to work in the state of Georgia. Yeah. You have a remote job. You can work anywhere in the States except Georgia or North Dakota. Right? Throw in North Dakota. Yeah. Or North Dakota. You live in either place. But you want this job. It's good money. Could be very good money. You wouldn't even ask the question. That wouldn't even be a question. Why? Because that's the law of the land. It's illegal. Then a person say, I know other people did it. And they never got caught. Or they know a whole group of people. Well, Murphy Stein's law will make Mr. Murphy Jewish here. Right? Too bad an Irishman got, blamed for everybody's mishaps. Right? So Murphy Stein's law is everyone else won't get caught except for you. And when you get caught, you're in serious trouble. Serious trouble. Because if it's a question of the law of the land and you're wherever you live, there's no question. The only question is if they do things that go against Torah and what you're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do. That's a different issue. But the law of the land stands. So if the law of the land stands, what do I care what the Zionists? What do I care how bad, they want to treat Orthodox Jews and whatever they've done to, when kids came from, forget where they were, from Yemen, and they totally made them non-religious, cut off their pay, it's different things. Yeah, they got a lot of issues. They could have saved tens of thousands of Jews in Europe, during the Holocaust. They didn't want them. They got a lot of blood on their hands, no question. But what does that have to do? What does that have to do with the law of the land over here? Being in Israel, you're not subjected to that. Because you can work here and work remote. That's not a problem. So even if you say there's no law of the land, very good, but where you're coming from, there is. So once you're coming from a place where the law of the land is, the question is moot. Because that's lying. Right? That's lying, and that's stealing, that's misrepresentation, that's fraud. You can't do it. That's forbidden, regardless of what goes on here. Now, there's a separate question. And the separate question is, even if you hold there's no law of the land here, then there's a very strong opinion to say, whatever you're going to do, if it goes against what the law of the land is, you better not get caught. Because if you get caught, you're toast. Make an absolute desecration of God's name and absolute Chil Hashem. Now, someone here mentions, well, it's worse if you don't get caught. Why is it worse? Why in the world would it be worse if you don't get caught? If you're going to hold according to those opinions that it's okay, and you don't get caught, so you didn't do anything wrong. Right? If you meant to say it's going to be worse if you get caught, yeah, that's true. That 100% is true. Because the media, which a bunch of leftists anyway, they will make mincemeat out of this person. Orthodox Jew, got caught for, all kinds of things. Right? Right? Someone mentioned they have to pay for it and get them. Well, you pay for it in this world also. Doesn't mean you're going to necessarily pay for it in the next world. You will, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. You can pay for it in this world also, right? Let's say you're the one in 10,000 that gets caught. You got caught. Yeah? You're the one in 10,000 that got caught, or even higher. You're going to pay in this world. They're going to make mincemeat out of you. Yeah? You go to jail, you pay a huge fine, whatever it is. You'll pay here. Right? If let's say, let's use the other way around. Let's say you didn't get caught. You will pay later. Right? If what you did is wrong in God's eyes, you'll surely pay that. If you don't pay here, you'll pay there. Better to pay here first. Then you don't have to pay as much later. Right? But, if you don't get caught, if you don't get caught, then, it doesn't make sense why it should be worse. Right? Unless it's forbidden. Right? If it's something forbidden, you don't get caught. Okay, you get away with it, but not in God's eyes. God's eyes, you won't get away with it. In the eyes of man, you got away with it. People get caught doing things because they have egos. They think it's never going to happen to them. A lot of times. Or they just don't plan it well enough or whatever. They get caught. But, my assumption would be that at some point a person's doing something illegally, at some point they're going to get caught. It's just a matter of time. However you get caught doesn't matter. Someone squealed on you, you weren't careful, you didn't cover up your tracks well enough, whatever it is. Person eventually will probably get caught. Someone will get caught. Right? If you didn't get caught now, doesn't mean 5 years down the line you won't get caught. Or 10 years down the line or whatever. Doesn't mean that. Eventually a person, if God wants them to get caught, they'll get caught. Doesn't matter. Right? Doesn't matter. Someone here mentions they can trace it anyway and comes to a policy you need to physically appear in the office. Okay, if that would be the case. If that would be the case. These things are not foolproof. Right? You're right. If someone's got a VPN, they could trace it probably. I don't see why not. Right? If you physically have to be there, right? If you had to be there like once a week, that's going to be kind of hard living somewhere. It's not going to be worth it. Right? If it's far away. But let's say we'll make it very easy. Let's say you didn't have to. Let's say all the meetings are online. They're all online. Let's say. No, you're right. It's probably not true. But let's say. If that would be the case. Let's say in that sense you wouldn't get caught. You didn't have to be there physically. Yeah? So if you didn't have to be there physically, then you run into the question. Well, let's say, okay, are VPNs the end all things where they would never know where you are? I don't know, you're right. Probably they could find out. Right? Someone could find out probably. It depends how good they are, but yeah. They're only as good as the people that program them. So let's say, Let's say no one would ever find out. Right? Probably impossible, but let's say. So if no one would ever find out, so that's now the question is that permitted? So the answer is no. Stealing, even if you don't get caught. And even if you went through the rest of your life, you worked there, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, you made all this money, whatever. And let's say you never got caught. Let's say you retired, you made a ton of money, very good, you never got caught. Yeah, something's going to happen either in this world or in the next world or both. There is going to be payback. There is going to be payback. Because in God's eyes, it's wrong. Right? There's just no way around it. Right? If God's, in God's eyes, if he says there's nothing wrong with it, you didn't do anything wrong, okay. But you're committing fraud over here. You're deceiving people. So the law of the land says you can't do that. So again, this is something very simple. I would think it's very simple. That the law of the land says you can't do it. That's it. Right? No way around it. Even if you could get away around it, they still say it's forbidden. So if you have cases like, tax things, we got legal loopholes. Okay, it's legal. You can use it. It's a question of a moral issue, but you can use it. If it's legal, it's legal. What's the problem? You might say, well, maybe morally shouldn't do it. Maybe. But if it's legal, it's legal. But if this is something illegal and they say you can't do it, then you can't do it. Again, regardless, you come to Israel, there is the law of the land, it's not the law of the land. What the Zionists do, what the Zionists don't do, irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Because, even if a person would learn so much better here, they raise themselves to a high spiritual level, they stink to high heaven in God's eyes. Because they're a fraud themselves. It's like stealing someone's lulav and shaking it. Oh, I thought I got the greatest mitzvah. I had all the intentions of the Yerizo, all the intentions in Kabbalah. Very good. Yeah, you stink to high heaven. You don't get the mitzvah. You don't get the mitzvah. That's what it is. It's a transgression at the same time. How can you think you get the mitzvah? Oh, but look at the level I'm on, this and that. Doesn't matter. They can know more than all of us put together in 10 lifetimes and learn so well and this and that. And they're corrupt. And there are people like that. They are corrupt. I'm not going to say everybody, certainly not. Just saying, there are people justifying. And at least if they get caught, they should admit they did something wrong. Yeah. Why would someone money launder? Why would someone money launder? So they don't have to pay tax. Pretty simple. Yeah, they take too much taxes anyway, blah, 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 and they have an institution. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You get caught. You owe all this back money. That's money. It needs to be taxed. You use the money for other things. That's lying. 100% that's lying. Right? Not to mention it's against law. It's fraud. Yeah, it's fraud. If you caught the lie stops one human lie, okay. Right? Each human believes the lie, another sin becomes another sin. Again, if you're the only one who knows, right? Let's make this, crystal clear. If you're the one defrauding, okay, maybe some other people know, whatever it is, right? But let's say you're the only one that knows. You didn't get caught, right? So the lie gets perpetuated. Depends on how many people they told, right? If they told a lot of people, yeah, so you're right, right? It's still out there. In the world, the lie exists. Now the question is, what's going to happen? Where's the payback going to come? Where's the payback going to come? There are stories of people in different businesses that never had credentials. They passed themselves off as whatever. They never had credentials. Eventually they got caught. They got caught because they got caught as frauds. For things that whatever they did. Number of people. Heard a number of stories like that. So eventually, you're going to think you're going to beat the system. You might beat the system for a little bit. Maybe for a long time. Eventually, it's going to come down like a deck of cards. Right? And that's what usually happens. That's what usually happens. Not going to say always, whatever. But again, even if it didn't happen. Let's say a person got away with it. They got away with it. In the next world, they ain't getting away with it. If they don't pay for it here at some level, right? Either they don't pay for it here, let's say. They'll pay for it there, no question. No question. Someone there says that you work from Israel, then yeah, you look for another job. Plenty of companies, yeah. True. You gotta, what's the problem though? I see other people taking shortcuts and making money. And making more money. So they say, why should I do it? That's how people get caught up in this. There was someone, I just heard a story recently, someone I don't know what the sentence was, but they got caught they got caught doing something, and everybody's doing it. Everybody was doing it, but it got caught up in it, this and that, and got caught. Right? Got caught, and you're playing with fire. You're playing with, certain things people know. Yeah, this is forbidden to do, but everybody does it. Why do people do it? That's business. Someone asked the great rabbi, one of the Torah giants of the last generation. I've told the story before a number of times. So yeah, my friend was there when he asked it. Someone comes to one of the Torah giants of the last generation and says, listen, I have certain quality merchandise I want to sell, certain types of cloth I want to sell. I have grade A, grade B, grade C. And he says, I want to sell it all as grade A. So the rabbi looks at him, he said, I don't understand the question. He goes, so he starts saying it slower, thinking like he didn't hear him. He said, I understood the question, it's stealing. So he says, why do you think that it's permissible? This guy answered. This guy answers, a religious Jew. Can't say how religious after hearing this, right? But guy answers, come on, that's business. It's like, Rabbi, that's business. Business to defraud. It's business to lie. So you can say this guy's at least on a level, at least he asked the question. Yeah. But how do you misrepresent three different types, of quality cloth, whatever it is? How do you have three different types, grade A, grade B, and grade C, and even think in your mind, rationally, that's okay, to sell it as grade A? What's the answer? Money. Money clouds the person. Person wants to make a quick buck. It's easier. Of course. It's gonna, you make more money. Because if you're trying to sell it all as grade A, you won't make as much money. But if you got other garbage in there, so what? So you give them some good things. The rest you give them garbage, you made a good profit. Sounds great. It's called fraud. It's called fraud. But I got to give the person credit, though. At least they had the guts to ask the question. Other people wouldn't even ask the question. They just would have done it. Yeah, business is tricky business. Business is tricky. Because, person sees other people doing things. And, technically it's legal. Right? Let's say. Or, it's risky. And if you get caught, could be serious, could be repercussions. Serious repercussions. You have a lot of that with mortgage fund. What do people do? They'll get someone inspect the house, and they'll jack up the value, right? Even though it's not worth as much. They're working hand in hand with a real estate broker, let's say, and they'll say this is the value. So they'll be able to, let's say qualify for a bigger loan, because you're getting, a bigger thing, and and you present this whole thing. What happens? The whole thing's a sham. It's a sham because you're giving something value it doesn't have, but you're jacking up the value. Once you jack up the value, that's not what it's worth. That's not what it's worth, and you're saying it's worth less, so you can sell it for more or whatever. Oh, it's kind of fraud. Right? It's fraud. But people get caught doing that also because there's a wider margin, much wider margin, making money. Okay, but again, at what price? at the potential that a person go to jail? What, at what price? What about, I'm not talking about secular people, for a religious person. Because the draw of making a lot of money, short amount of time is much greater. So the inclination, has a person, grabs hold of a person. What does he think? Oh, you won't get caught. You won't be one of the ones that get caught. Yeah, maybe. Maybe, but that's, again, the whole thing is, someone here points out, which is true, is that if God's going to give you parnosa, if he's going to give you the ability to make a living, whether sometimes it's harder or not, you have to have emunah. You have to have emunah. And if things don't make ends meet, okay, so you got to work out other things, whatever it may be, but you have to have emunah. If you're trying to beat the system, that means you're lacking emunah, right? Right? And for a person, if they get caught, it's a huge disgrace. So someone asks, can we pay for it here? Yeah. You can get severely punished here. Severely punished. That doesn't mean, by the way, even if a person would, that you're going to, in the next world, you're not going to have anything. In other words, you get all the punishment now. I tend to doubt it. You get punishment for it. But I don't think you get the whole thing. Obviously, it depends, what a person does and how much suffering they go through in the end. If they go through enough suffering, so maybe. Yeah, if they go through enough suffering, maybe they don't have to pay later. But they can certainly get punished here, no question. I'm just saying, what would happen, let's say, they live to a ripe old age, and they die. They didn't suffer. Same way they didn't go through that, suffering that's going to atone for what they did. They'll get it in the next world for sure. Right? No doubts. But what happens normally is someone, they'll get it in this world. They'll suffer in this world some level. Whether it's health-wise, maybe it's financially, maybe other ways. They'll definitely suffer in this world. But it doesn't mean it's all the suffering they're going to get. It's better to get all the suffering here, but no one wants it. They'll say, I'll take part of it here, part of it there. Or, suffering here is hard. Nobody wants it, but you can definitely suffer here, no question. No question. And my guess for what I know is you will suffer here. You might suffer dramatically here. Doesn't mean you get off scot-free in the next world, even if you suffer a lot here. You got to remember, when a person dies, it's partial atonement. It's not full atonement. Definitely not full atonement. And even if a person, let's say, gets atonement for what they did, let's say this fraud, they get atonement for. They suffer whatever, they get atonement. Okay, but what about the Lashon Hara they spoke? Yeah, they're going to get atonement for that. What about, they cause someone damage. They ask them for forgiveness. They don't get atonement for that. They're going to have to suffer later. For sure they're going to have to suffer for that. Yeah, so that's what I would say about that. A lot of questions here. Let's deal with them. Somebody says, what does it mean that a person out of Israel doesn't have a God? Right? Rabbi said God needs us as much as we need him. Okay, that's a whole discussion I don't want to get into. That's a whole major discussion. Because really, God doesn't need us. Right? God doesn't need us. Right? So yeah, there are rabbis saying, a certain rabbi said, God doesn't need us. That's heresy. Right? And that's exactly what it sounds. It goes against the first principle of the Rambam. Right? No question. But other people say it's not heresy because a lot of things in Kabbalah that say, yeah, God does need us in certain ways. But really, he doesn't need us. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't like those type of answers. Because the simple answer is God does not need us, period. God created the world not for us. By definition, why did he create it for us? The Ramchal says at the beginning of his introduction to Path of the Just. Because God is the Mektiv. He wants to give of his goodness to us. That means he didn't do it for himself. He didn't create it for himself. Who did he create it for? For us. Right? But that goes hand in hand with that principle. That God doesn't need us. He doesn't need the world. Doesn't need man. Doesn't need anyone. I would ask the question. We make God king on Rosh Hashanah. right? We spend 2 days making God king, going through all these liturgical poems, making, kingship and judgment and all this, and hearing the shofar. Very good. Now, if we didn't do that, let's say we didn't do that, is God king or not? He's king, right? Take my lulav here, right? Person shakes their lulav, they shake it this way, backwards, right? To the back, to the side, straight up and straight down. 6 directions. It shows God has dominion in all directions in this world and up and down, meaning the world above and the world below. So he's got dominion everywhere. So God's got everyone to serve him. He's got plants, he's got animals, he's got the stars, the moon, right? But he doesn't have a creature that has free will like that. Just us. So if he didn't have us, would he be king? Right? Very deep theoretical question here. If God doesn't have man, is he king? He's king. Does he need man to make him king? Does he need man to make him king? Seemingly, no. He doesn't need man. Why do I say seemingly? Because in reality, a king can't be king if he doesn't have servants. He doesn't have someone to serve him, to keep what he decrees. So in that sense, quote unquote, he needs man, but technically he doesn't. He really doesn't. So that's not heresy either, because he doesn't need us. 100% he doesn't need us, right? And God can be king even without us. He for sure can be king. So, this rabbi that says, God needs us, it's a problem. According to this, it's for sure a problem. It's for sure a problem. Now, I saw, a lot of other sources very much steeped in Kabbalah that say at a certain level, God does need us. But see, even if that's true, so you have different opinions here. Let's keep it very simple. God doesn't need us. Doesn't need us. I have to go to Kabbalah to go through, jump through hoops, and to tell me, no, there are a lot of sources that say he does need us in whatever level. And we play a portion, we play a part in creation. See, I don't like Webster's 8th definition. I got a problem with that. Even if there are sources, even if there are sources to say such a thing, let's say, I'm not denying that, let's say there are a number of sources that say such a thing. Okay. But in general, God doesn't need us, right? Everyone would agree. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of going to Kabbalah to answer these questions. Kabbalah can answer other things, right? Exodus chapter 25 verse 8. Right? God says he wants to dwell amongst the Jewish people, right? He wants to dwell amongst us. How do you put God in a box? I don't care how big the Mishkan is. Let's say the tabernacle is 3 football fields long. Let's say it's a humongous area, right? 300 feet, 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, whatever it is. Very good. Can you put God in that? Can you put God in a box? No. So what does that mean? That God wants to dwell amongst the Jewish people. Now, you can only explain that according to Kabbalah. It has to do with Tzimtzum and God constricting himself and going through the spiritual worlds to get here, but God is infinite. Maybe behind the rock. Boom! God's everywhere. So that's the whole question that, some people ask me a lot. They say, if there's a spark of God in everybody, how can that be? God's infinite. Good question. Right? These are Kabbalistic questions. I don't answer them. Yeah, but I don't, simple explanation. You would ask everybody. Simple explanation. Does God need us? No. He doesn't. He has no needs. Right? He has no needs. If he's got no needs, he doesn't need us. So you want to tell me now there are sources in Kabbalah that say that he does need us at a certain level, and however you're going to go according to Kabbalah and what that means, it bothers me. It's true. Let's say it's true. Let's say there are, numerous sources. But, why do we even entertain the possibility? I don't care if it's in Chassidus. I don't care if it's in Kabbalah. Why are you opening up a Pandora's box? the people that don't know very much. I have an issue with that. Other people may not have an issue with this. You got, a lot of Chabad rabbis, they teach everybody Tanya. You know how difficult Tanya is to learn in general? Full of Kabbalah, full of Hasidus. That's how you learn Path of the Just, learn the ways of the righteous, learn the gates of repentance, by Rabbi Yonah. I recommend learning Derech Hashem, the way of God, by the Ramchal. Hard book to go through, but I think it's a game changer even without going through Kabbalah. Tanya is a very hard book to read, very hard book to go through. And they teach people that know nothing. So good. They want to take certain aspects of it, whatever, bring it down to this world. People want to get into Hasidus. This is not so simple. This is not a beginner's book in Hasidus. But they're teaching everybody. Okay. That's their thing. That's their thing. But as Kaufman said, you can't run till you learn how to walk or crawl. Can't learn calculus unless you learn higher mathematics. Teaching non-Jews Hasidus is like trying to teach someone, who's learning to add and subtract. You teach them calculus. Even if you water it down. Even if you water it down. And I have nothing against Chabad in general, unless they're Messianic and they think the Rebbe is the Messiah. That's okay, different issue. Yeah. But I have nothing against them. Teaching Hasidus to beginners, I think, is a problem. If people are ready for it, the water it down, the this and that, it's very esoteric, very good. Yeah. But for a lot of people going to listen to it, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand the intricacies of this. They want to learn it on their own, whatever they can, it's 2 hours, whatever, learn something else. So why are you coming out saying, God needs us? And you're going to go through like deep Hasidus and deep Kabbalah and, whatever. I don't think there's any purpose to that. Person did it, can do it. Other people are going to back him up, according to Kabbalah and Hasidus, okay. But that's like going, to Webster's 4th, 5th definition. Even if they agree, and they have to agree. Otherwise, they are for sure heretical. They have to agree that God has no needs. They have to agree to that. Yeah, basic principle of Judaism. Has no needs. Like why, you want to go deep into Hasidus and this, that, okay. You want to broadcast it live? You're going to have issues. People are going to have issues with this. You want to tell me Webster's 8th definition? It's a problem. And most people don't know that. When you make a statement like that, and it seems like you're saying, well, that's the opinion, God does need us, that's a serious problem. You're not clarifying that. You're not telling what the parameters are. You're saying God needs us. Well, that goes against so many other things. Basic things. Of course people are going to call him out on it. You got people defending him again. If what they're saying is true according to Hasidus and Kabbalah. Okay. Right? So you have another side. But this is misleading. They'll say you can't call him a heretic for that. Yeah? Okay, maybe. But why are you opening your mouth about something that you are going to cause controversy? Well, maybe the person doesn't care. Okay. But if you have to go to deep Kabbalistic ideas to explain why he does and this and that, why do it? In a public forum like that. That's my issue. And again, even on the Kabbalistic side, let's say he's right. Let's say, but a lot greater people than me, steeped in Kabbalah, are going to say that. So let's say it's true. Let's say they have proper sources. It's true. You open up a huge Pandora's box. And if you don't clarify what you say, and you don't make it clear, you sound like God needs us, and he doesn't. That's a problem. That's misleading. If you clarify and say, there are Kabbalistic sources that say this, and it's brought down in Hasidus, and he's not going to explain that, because no one's going to understand. But you make a statement like that, you don't give over the other part. You don't clarify, you don't say what it is. that this is the majority opinion, whatever. But really, God doesn't need it because I have these other sources, and it turns the whole thing on its head, and Kabbalah and Hasidus and all this together. Okay, so show it as a huge, show it as a complete package. Show it as a complete package. But if you don't do that, you just give that side of the opinion, it's also misleading. I've seen other people just on this topic. I've seen other people do on certain subjects also. Say this is the absolute law. Now, most things I wouldn't necessarily disagree with what they say, but I heard a number of things that say this is the absolute law. You can't go against it, whatever. It's not true. It's misleading. Why is it misleading? Because there are other opinions. Don't say that. They don't say that. So if you say, listen, it's a difference of opinion, but we hold according to this opinion, it's a stronger opinion because of this reason, that reason. I also don't have a problem with that. But if you're going to say this is a luck and no one disagrees, that's a problem. That's a problem. Yeah, I've seen people do that. Now, most things that they would say, I wouldn't disagree with. But that can be misleading. So if you're going to say something, and you're going to back it up in Jewish law, whatever, and you're going to say, this is what the mainstream halacha is. There are people disagree, but, we go according to the majority, and this is what the majority holds, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but you present it as a complete package. You don't just, read the law and say, this is the law, no one disagrees. If no one disagrees, good. If other people disagree, you can't, if it's a minority opinion, you can say, okay, majority opinion is this. Maybe you can hold according to the minority opinion in certain cases. Maybe. Right? But you have to make it clear. They can say, this is the outright halakha, but it's not true. In some things. It's not true. So you have to say that. You can't just say, I don't know who this is, is wrong. But there's a valid opinion on the other side. If there's a valid opinion on the other side, you can't say that. You can say the difference of opinion, we hold this way. Okay. I don't have a problem with it. I also don't have a problem, my Rabbi will say something, and I hold like that against, other people, but I take the good with the bad, whatever he says. Like someone asked me that this morning. It's like, oh, yeah, I said, I hold the stringencies with the leniencies. I don't pick and choose. Person picks and chooses. Okay, they pick and choose. But anyway, he says, okay, this is what you should do. And it doesn't matter if other people don't do it or not. He said, this is what you should do. Okay. He's a Torah giant to the generation. So says he doesn't tell anyone to do that. I can tell everyone to do that. Right? But I asked him, should I do this or that or whatever? He says, yeah, that you can do. Most people don't do it. Doesn't matter. A certain thing that he told me. Other people say, but nobody does that. Okay. But he holds that way. And he's a Torah giant, so he can tell you to do it or not do it. That's it. He told me to do it. You're going to argue with that? They could. He goes against other people, you're going to go according to the majority. I take the stringencies with the leniencies. That's it. All right, no one else does it. Okay. They can disagree with him. Let them disagree. So I'll tell people clear, yeah, this is not the majority opinion. So I'm going to go against the majority. Because he told me that's what you do. And he's an authority to be able to do it. Anyone wants to argue with him, they can argue with him. If they're on the level. He's the Torah giant of the generation. Doesn't mean everyone agrees with everything he says, okay. But if a person's a student of him and follows it, then that's what you do. Regardless. Someone asks what's the meaning of the person out of the land of Israel doesn't have God. You don't see God the same way you do in Israel. That's what it means. In other words, things here in Israel, you see things more direct. More divine providence. Outside of Israel, you don't see it. You're subject to the nations. Here, you're not subject to the nations. People giving money and military aid and this and that. Okay, so they have a say in certain things. Okay, but divine providence here much greater than there. No question. No question. So it's like there, God's not available. I'm not saying not available. That's the wrong way, but it's like it's not direct. You don't see things direct because a lot of other things going around. A lot of other things going on. So if there are a lot of other things going on, it's like it's like God's not there. You don't see it as direct as you see it here. Right? That's what it means. Right? Rabbi says God needs us. All right, I mentioned that. Someone here says it's hard for people then grow up with values to get them after they've grown up. Well, it depends who you listen to. Not impossible. Rabbi Kiva started learning at the age of 40. Yeah. The age of 40. His whole value system changed. There's no olive base. Right? So the answer is, yeah, he didn't get the right values growing up. Got them later. Definitely possible. Someone asks, what's my view on Yadia booth? I have no idea what that is. So you want to explain to me what it is, and I'll give my opinion on it. Someone asks, one second. The concept is somebody says something is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Yeah, it's not something we should stand by. Listen, there's supply and demand. Supply and demand. Person buys a house, in a neighborhood where there's not a high demand. Price is going to be very cheap, relatively cheap because not high demand. If there's high demand, here in Israel, religious communities, there's high demand, and you live in a war zone, no pun intended. And prices have not gone down in the last 30 years. They just keep going up. And people keep saying it's not going to be that way forever. I don't know. It hasn't stopped. There are times it's slower than other times, whatever. But in general, prices keep going up. Why? Supply and demand. Right? So you're right. Something is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. Yeah. The thing could be a hunk of junk, and they'll pay, $10,000 for it. Okay. Is that what's the value? No. It's not the value. In real estate, what's the value? Because I was involved in real estate at one point. What's the value of a house? What is sold in the last 3 months in the area? That's the value. That 100% is the value. Not a made-up value. It's what things have sold for in the vicinity, same type of house. Now, let's say that house, things have sold for, let's say, $250,000, right? Let's say. And a person, because he wants to live in that area, is willing to pay $350,000. Now, is that the value? It's not the value, but that's what the person's willing to pay for, right? That's what the person's willing to pay for. I see things here where I live, like people ask astronomical numbers. That's not the value. The value is what's sold. But the value can be driven up because people will pay an arm and a leg to do it. So they'll pay a lot more. Now, that doesn't mean it's the value. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the value. Right? And again, it depends what it is. So, someone buys something, for them it's worth a lot. So they'll pay a lot for it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the value is. The value is what most people would probably pay for. That's the value. Yeah. Now, if people are willing to pay more for it, then the value goes up. Or the value goes down, right? It depends. Right? So what someone's willing to pay for it, if that becomes standard and the norm, then that becomes, that becomes the value. Someone asks, okay, back to this, if the person's not caught. Okay, I said, if they're not caught, if a person committed fraud, they're not caught, and let's say they don't pay in this one. Let's say they don't suffer, let's say they die a natural death. Everything's good. They die in their 90s, natural death. They didn't really suffer. So you say they didn't pay for it. Oh, but when they die, they'll pay for it. It's just God, for whatever reason, didn't pay for it in this one. He didn't pay them back in this one for it. He waited. Now, why did he wait? Good question. Very good question. I can't answer. But if they don't pay in this world, they'll pay in the next one. But it could be they pay in both worlds. It doesn't mean they don't pay in this one. It doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that. Even if they don't get caught. Just because they didn't get caught doesn't mean they're not going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it. Just doesn't necessarily mean in this one. They might pay in this one. I think in many cases they'll pay in this world, but it won't be the final thing. Won't be. They'll pay in the next world as well. What are proper kosher actions to an employer that won't pay out unless they amount to over 10 grand? You sue him. If he's a Jew, you take him to base. If he's a non-Jew, take him to court. If you got a contract, right? Let's say you had a contract, you had an agreement. If you had a contract and an agreement, go after him. He owes you the money. Yeah, so you take him to court. If he won't pay. Now, what if it's just an agreement, but you don't have proof? Let's say you don't have a written agreement. See if you have a written agreement, you say, listen, I got this piece of paper, you can flush him. You got this piece of paper, you take him to court. He says you owe you the money. You owe him, take him to court and sue him. If you had a verbal agreement, now it's your word against his. So then, if that is the case, so then you're going to have to bring proof against the other person to say that he owes you the money. You can say, I never agreed. I only agreed up until this point. You could say that. You can totally lie. So the only way is you're going to have to prove somehow that he made the agreement and agreed to pay you then. If you haven't written, very good, right? I think in the diamond district, when it comes to buying and selling diamonds, usually it's done with a handshake. I don't know if that's changed. I don't think it's changed. But if a person agrees to buy, Ruvain agrees to buy, I don't know, $50,000 worth of diamonds from Shimon. Yeah, he agrees to buy that and they shake on it. That's like writing a document. That's like having it written down. And if he welches on it and he says, I'm not going to do it, he can sue him. Because that's what the agreement is. That's like having signatures on a document. So if a person had a verbal agreement, you don't have proof. It's your word against theirs. Right? So then you would have to bring proof. You would have to bring proof that he agreed. That he agreed to pay it. If you have a document, then it'd be a lot easier. Then you threaten him. Then you say, listen, you got a certain amount of time, give me the money. Or make payments, let's say. And if they don't, I have this document, I'm going to court and I'll sue you. Or make a deal. If they don't agree, then sue them. That's what you do. And that's what you do. It doesn't matter what the amount is. If they owed you $500, they agreed to give you $1,000, whatever it is. I got cheated out of deals because, people want to make more money. I was involved in real estate. I wasn't going to go after them. I mean, it caused me a loss. Could have gone after them. Right? But, they totally lied. So, if there's an agreement, and it's a verbal agreement, the question is how far you want to go to get it. So if it's the same amount of money, and if you have proof that you can show that he owes you the money, even if there's no written agreement, then you go after him. And it's sue. Yeah, if it's a significant amount of money, for sure. I would say, is someone going to do it for $1,000? Could be the principle of it, they would, but they go after them, with the lawyer's going to get the money. So it's not even worth it. Right? There's certain things that may not be worth it to do, but if it's a significant amount of money, why not? But you'd have to prove it. Right? You definitely have to prove it. Someone who says making bad choices as a youth is normal, making those adults a bad choice. Yeah. It is a bad choice. Right? But why do people make bad choices? Greed, evil inclination. They're not thinking with their head straight on. So, the evil inclination gets them, entices them. Yeah. And the person can make a serious mistake. Or serious mistake. Like, God can say, you know what? I didn't tell you to do that, but I didn't stop you. So you say, God, it's your fault. You should have stopped me. God says, you went against Kaufman's 615th commandment. Don't be a moron. I didn't tell you to do it. I didn't tell you to do it. Or the 614th commandment, don't be stupid. You were stupid. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? I'd love to play God, put on my funny George Burns class and my funny monster and say, you were dumb. Right? Anyone ever see the movie Dumb and Dumber? Dumb! You made a dumb mistake. Why? Could be any number of reasons. A person's heart could have been in the right place. 100% could have been in the right place. But there's enticement there. Make a little bit extra money, whatever. I got screwed out of a deal. I mean, I was still part of the deal, but I got messed up for like a couple $1,000. It wasn't like someone to mess me over $50,000. Like I get it. It makes more sense, more money for them. But you put the deal together, you mix everything together, you put the people together, and they're still gonna try and mess you up for $1,000, and you're the one that put the deal together. It's great. That's great. Someone asks, tired of all the abuse, lies of the world, corrupt government, anti-Semites. Yeah, might as well just sleep the rest of your life. I'm thinking it's best to withdraw and live a peaceful life. Great idea. I'm going to be there on the boat, sipping pina coladas. Beautiful. Yeah. What is the easiest, most comfortable, quiet, relaxing way within Orthodox Judaism? Relaxing way of life. You want that answer? There is none. I like these simple questions. There's no simple answer. The Ramchal says, and I'll mention it once, twice, 100 times. The Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, you're in this world to toil. That's it. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. And even let's say you won the lottery and you're kicking back, you're on a boat, you're on an island somewhere, I don't know, you're sipping pina coladas. Yeah. You got the easy way. You got the easy way. That's what God wants. He wants you to be in the thick of everything. He wants you to make good decisions. He wants you to struggle, right? He wants you to overcome things. He wants you to work hard. No one gets it easy. Nobody has it easy. So yeah, is there any way of tuning out? The Rambam says the laws of repentance. One of the 24 things stops a person from repenting is you separate yourself from the community. So you're going to ask me, how do you do it? What's the easiest, most comfortable way? There is none. I've been looking for cliff notes for years, never found them. Never found them. There's no easy way. You're going to have trials and tribulations across the board. The easiest thing I could tell anyone would be if a person can find a job, they can do it remote and make a lot of money by doing it, which is, not going to be so easy. But that gives you more time to learn. You're not in contact with so many people. That has its disadvantages also, right? But at the same time, you do relatively well. You don't have to work so many hours, right? And you're able to learn the rest of the time, right? But yeah, I'll give you an example. Someone came to my Rabbi once, asked him for a blessing before Rosh Hashanah. They asked him, what blessing do you want? So he said, listen, I've been very successful this year. God's been very good to me. But I want, for the next year, I don't want God to meddle into my affairs. I want things to keep going the same. I don't want him to meddle in my affairs. So I can't give you a blessing like that. It's like a blessing in vain, right? I would have taken a sledgehammer and slapped him. I'm like, come on. That you're asking, God's giving you all this bounty. God's helped you out the entire year. And now you're going to spit in his face and say, don't bother me? Right? God can say, I'll leave you up to the elements. What do you think is going to happen? You're in serious trouble, right? He's not saying he wants to, sit back and sip pina coladas. He's not saying that, right? But he wants everything to go smoothly. He doesn't want to interfere. That's like saying, I don't want to have any connection. Just leave me alone. Just give me all the money, whatever, and just leave me alone. Well, I can't even believe it. Like someone, ask such a thing, But like I said, I'm glad he gets these questions, not me. Jews are meant to be withdrawn. Oh, yeah. So, Chosavav says, the gate of self-counting. Actually, we just gave this over last week and partially this week, that he says one of the worst things a person can do is separate themselves from everything. I.e., he goes to live in the mountains, he barely eats anything, eats from the ground, right? Or eats, I don't know, different weeds or, I don't know, different grasses or who knows what. Totally, has no contact with people. No contact with people. So he says that's the worst of these scenarios. The absolute worst. Because it's talking about separating yourself, not taking the excess excesses of these worlds. But that's going to an extreme, right? That you're living in the middle of nowhere, you're barely eating anything, your clothes are all, worn out or who knows what, and you're living like a dog in a certain way. He says that's the worst. You got to be part of a community. You got to be part of, you got to be a part of society. You can't be a recluse. If you're a recluse, then Torah's not for you. Right? Sounds great. Go live in a cave. But you have other issues living in a cave also. But that's an extreme. That for sure is an extreme. There is no easy path. Let everybody understand there's no easy path. Even a person made a lot of money, and it's going to support them for 10 lifetimes. Very good. Yeah, you have other issues. So money won't be one of them. Okay. I know two people that I don't know them at all really, but they each one inherited $100 million. So okay, they don't have money issues. They'll never have money issues. I mean, I don't know how you can spend $100 million, but but they'll have other issues. They'll definitely have other issues. So you say, well, that's easy. That's an easier life. Very good. It's a much easier life. Money doesn't mean anything because you got plenty of it. So you can go here, go there, do that. Right? 100%. Yeah, but what real meaning in life they're going to have? What are they going to have if they're married? What are they going to give to their kids? Be a disaster. Be an absolute disaster. Pick your poison. You have to be part of society. I hate to tell everyone, you have to be part of society. Right? For better or for worse, you're right. Society's corrupt and society is bad. Isn't Israel no great shakes either? I mean, best place to live spiritually, but got a lot of issues here. Tremendous amount of issues here. So, but you got to be part of society. You got to live with others. There is no. So the answer is there is no easy path. There's just no easy path. So engage then, but show way no stress. I wish there was a way not to have stress. Everybody has stress, some more, some less. I'll give an example. Someone asked, Noah Weinberg, blessed memory, the founder of Asia Torah, and many other yeshivas, but founder of Asia Torah. He asked somebody, he goes, "What's your greatest pleasure?" So he thought about it, and he said, "My kids." He said, "Beautiful." He said, "What's the greatest aggravation you have in your life?" Person thought about it, he goes, "My kids." Same thing, right? He said, "My kids." So he goes, "Okay, let's go back. So you said your greatest pleasure is your kids." He said, "Let me just ask you." He says, "How many kids do you have?" He goes, "One." He goes, "What's the matter? Too much pleasure? Too much enjoyment. You only have one kid, right?" So, it would be great just to live in our own bubble. Everything's great. Nothing ever bothers us. No stress. It sounds beautiful. But, it's the F word. You know what the F word is? Fantasy. That's what it is. It's fantasy. How have I? It's like, it's like being in one of these make-believe movies. Like everything's great and everything's beautiful, but it doesn't work that way. That's not what life is. Yeah. So you have to know how to chill also, but you have to know how to deal with the world. And I'll tell you, and I'll give you free advice. This advice worth $1 million. You know how you chill in this world? Cut yourself off from the news. You cut yourself off from all these other things that don't really matter. And they're not only that, they're depressing. It's extremely depressing. Right? Same news, different day, but it can be extremely depressing. Yeah. So the less the person is in tune with that, I think that takes away a lot of stress also. In many ways. You got to be more insular. Just focus on Torah. That's the most important thing. You got to make a living, you do what it takes, and then, basically you got to be in your own world. But you have to live amongst people. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Separate themselves from everything's why our sons died. Not necessarily. There are a lot of reasons why they potentially died. One of them, well, you can say they didn't get married. Okay, that's one reason. One potential reason. But whatever the sin was, I mean, there were like at least half a dozen reasons that the Gemara gives. So it could be any one of those reasons, right? Could be, yeah. They didn't get married. Okay, that could be, right? That 100%, could be. The Korban Aron over there says when the Or Chaim Makadar, Or Chaim brings down, that he says when you're close to the king, you get burnt. So they're at a very high spiritual level. And whatever they did, whatever it was, God took them, even for something relatively minor. Now, the things that it says are very hard to understand. That they said, one of these old people are going to die, i.e. Moses and Aaron, then, or when Moses is going to die so they can take over. Like, it's also very hard to understand. They weren't looking for power. I mean, we can't even imagine who these people were, but, they didn't get married. That's one of them. They answer questions out in front of, Moshe Rabbeinu, where they should have asked permission for it. I mean, there are a number of things, but it's like, this is one of the more esoteric things, very hard to understand. So you can tell me, maybe the main reason they didn't have kids, they weren't, that's something they didn't do. Okay. But, there are half a dozen reasons here. That could be. But, they were on a different plane. They're on a total different plane. Right? And for some aspects of the golden calf, they all should have died. They should have died. Moses and Aaron should have died also. But so Moses said, they are holier than us because they were taken and not us. So Moses himself says, I think Rashi brings out, others bring out. So it had nothing to do with the fact that they weren't part of the world. It had something totally different. It's part of the punishment of sin, the golden calf. You can say, but they didn't have anything to do with it. Okay. Aaron technically also didn't have anything to do with it. Technically. Right? The way it looks. Very good. Yeah, not so simple. Let me see a few other questions here. Yeah, let me see. Somebody asked, "How if a king was created?" Yeah. All right, king's a different issue, right? We're all jealous of all the other kings, so they said, Jewish people said we want a king. Well, kingship didn't necessarily work out so well for the Jewish people. Want to be like the other nations is, problematic in and of itself. But yeah, what we need is we need to do what God wants us to do. At the highest level, and living in this world is hard. There's just no way around it. So it says, but he's got the angels that serve him. You're right. But angels don't have free will. Right? There are no such thing as fallen angels. So if there's no such thing as fallen angels, he's got you're right. He's got plants. He's got trees. Even if he didn't have this world, he's got spiritual beings to serve him, right? But they don't have free will. Right? So they serve him because they don't have a choice. So that's why he had to create somebody, some being, something in this world that's going to serve him that has free choice. They can say, no, I'm not going to serve him. I'm going to do what I want. I'm giving him my inclination. I'll do all these other things. Okay. The rest of creation, even the robots. Yeah. Right. 1 second. Uncle Butch has a good song. And Kings. Yeah. Everyone loves Hashem. He's everywhere. Right. Right. Not always easy to see him. And when there's tragedy, it's hard because God is all good. Why is there evil and all that? It's true. Someone asked, would Hashem need his wants? Right? It seems he wants us to need him. Now, that's a good question. Could God make a rock so big he can't throw it? No, he's infinite. Right? He's got no limitations. So does God, does God have needs? So by definition, he doesn't have needs. Obviously, he wants things to go a certain way. Right? And if he wants it to, he'll do it. If not, man's in control, so to speak. We have a limited amount of free will. Not the topic here, it's a much bigger topic. But yeah, we have limited amount of free will. But even so, if God has no needs, right? Then it's like, what could he ever want? What could he want that he can't give himself, or that he couldn't give to the world? Nothing. He's not limited, right? It's not limited, but it seems he wants us to need him. Well, that's pretty clear. It's if you read the Torah from cover to cover, it's very clear we need God more than he needs us. No question. No question. Because we have to serve him. by definition, if we have to serve him, it's not a question he needs us. You could say, but he needs us because he needs people to serve him. Someone there points out he's got the angels to serve him. Doesn't need us. He's got angels. He's got animals. He doesn't need this world. He could have had spiritual beings serve him. 100%. Right? But the Torah is very clear. We have an obligation to serve him. Very clear. There's no question. Right? That there's no question. But ultimately, bottom line, you're going to pin us down here. Does the Torah say that God needs us? No, he doesn't. Just the opposite. We need him a heck of a lot more than he needs us. Right? You got to remember, there's a discussion between the house of Hill and the house of Shammai. Gemara Eruvin says 2.5 years they're arguing. Was it a good thing for man to be created or not? Back and forth. Imagine 2.5 years. Back, yes, no, maybe, this, that, back and forth. Yeah. The end of the day, what was the answer? Better man wasn't created. But if man was created, they have to look into their actions. Very good. But they came to the conclusion it was a bad move. It was a bad move. Because look what man has the power to do. But God understood that, so. God doesn't have regret, right? You see the end of the Parshas Bereshit, God says, I regret creating man. What do you mean I regret? God knows past, present, future. There is no regret. When man does the right thing, he's happy. When man does the bad thing, he's not happy. But he created this world for the sake of the righteous. And everyone else, okay, we have to try and be righteous. But that's for our benefit. Does God really need me to struggle with this, that, and the other thing? He doesn't need me for that. Gives the opportunity. Gives the opportunity to overcome bad character traits. Huge opportunity. You think God needs my prayers? What are we going to say? Saturn, those beautiful rings. God's going to say, thank you very much. Pluto, that just got demoted as a planet. Frozen tundra, unbelievable. God's like, thank you very much. You think he needs me to praise him? You don't think he knows he created all that? Of course he does. But it's my acknowledgement. It's not for him. It's for my acknowledgement of what he does and the greatness that he has and the fact that he gives us life and the fact you got to say Modani in the morning thanking him he gave you life, because not, you wouldn't wake up, you die. He just takes your soul. So is the Torah clear that we need him and we need to serve him? Oh yeah, very clear. Very clear. Not the other way around. Definitely not the other way around. Right? But again, you could tell me Kabbalistically it's not true that really we're helping God in creation, different things. Okay, but ultimately does he need us? No. Ultimately, we need him, no question. Someone there says, yeah, Israel feels a lot closer to God outside, than outside of Europe or whatever. Again, all these places, right? Maybe except for the States, right? But all these places have so much Jewish blood on their hands, no question. But, as we said, a person can live in Israel, okay, but if not, there are good reasons why a person shouldn't come here. That shouldn't live there. But it's totally different. Because first of all, you're not in your own enclave. Even if you lived, in a separate Jewish community, you're dealing with everybody. You go to Walmart, you go to Home Depot, you go to all these places. That's why I always say you want to feel the pulse of what's going on in the world. Walk into Walmart, right? Go to Home Depot. You hear what people are talking about. Yeah. People are busy rebuilding the bathrooms. I don't know. Doing all kinds of other things. Who knows what? Whatever they're doing. Yeah. But that's the rest of the world. That's not me. That's not what I stand for. Right? But you live in these places. Okay. That's what it is. But, yeah, so you live in Israel, you're in your own enclave, you deal with Orthodox Jews most of the time, for better or for worse. And okay, it's different, it's a different reality. Much different reality. Secular people don't have so much contact with. In many ways. You see them, I'm not saying you no contact, but it's very different. Right? Very, very different. What a proper coach action to employer that they won't pay out? I want to answer that. Someone asked about Bar Kokhba and his son. Yeah, the world existed for them. And they lived in a cave. But why did they live in a cave? You know why they lived in a cave? Because they were going to get killed. They're being chased and hounded by the Romans. They didn't, if you were to interview them, right? Bring them on one of my podcasts. You would have interviewed them and said, did you go there at the beginning, at the outset? That's why you went in there to reach higher spiritual, levels, to be close to God? They would say, hell no. I mean, probably wouldn't have said that, but they would have said, were you kidding? We went there because they had a, $150 million bounty on my head. So I had to go in hiding. That's why they went in hiding. They didn't do it. They didn't do it because they want to reach higher spiritual levels. They did it because their lives were at stake. That's a very different thing. And that was, by the way, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, right? And he said, the world can exist for my son and me by ourselves on their level. Okay, right? But for whatever reason, they were in a cave for years. Till that bounty came off their head. That's the only reason they were there. Right? They weren't there by choice, trust me. They definitely weren't there by choice. Someone says, my pleasure was pain. Yeah. People find that out the easy way and the hard way, right? But sometimes a person has to get, knocked upside the head and suffer and go through a lot of difficulties because of bad choices, and they realize that, what they thought was good is really bad, right? Why did Hur die immediately? Oh, good question. Good question. Right? So I'm not really sure. But you see one thing, he did protest, and that's why Aaron didn't protest. He was afraid they were going to kill him. So I don't know. That needs further clarification. Right? Why he was killed. Right? Because Aaron was afraid. Aaron was definitely afraid. He said if he stands up to them, they'll kill him also. Like they did to Hur. Good question. Good question, not sure. One second. That was a Chabad Siddur meant that they came so close to Hashem, covered the incense before. Again, that's the main reason. The main reason is they brought incense into the Holy of Holies. You're only allowed to go in the Holies once a year. That was for the high priest. That was it. But they were on such a high spiritual level, they thought they knew better. Yeah, and God took them. Because you're not supposed to reinvent the wheel. God said only once a year. Some say they drank. Also, when they served. That was another punishment. Again, it's hard to know. But going to the Holy of Holies, you're only allowed to go once a year. It's the high priest. They overstepped their boundaries, but that's hard to understand. That is hard to understand at a simple level. Because how could they, they thought it was such an auspicious time. The finishing building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, auspicious time, beautiful. So they thought it was a great, God wouldn't mind. I don't know. Why would God not mind over here? Said you're only going once, but he thought he's going to look the other way. Well, they kind of thought wrong. It's hard to understand. Very, very hard to understand. One second. Someone there said the only reason I think that Hashem would need us to keep this world existing. He doesn't need man for that. He doesn't need this world. God, I would go on record and say, God could keep this world functioning without man in it. God can do anything. He doesn't need man for that. He doesn't need this world. Period. I don't know. He'll have the animals do things, and then when he doesn't need them, he'll just destroy it. But he doesn't need man for the world. Absolutely not. Right? Again, God can do anything. If God can do anything, he can keep the world going without man. Isn't this world a punishment for the original sin? No. Death is a punishment for the original sin. Every person, the Ramchal says, go and read Derech Hashem. Please, go and read the book of The Way of God by the Ramchal. He says very clear, you cannot have a portion of the world to come if you're not in this world. It's not punishment for death. It's not punishment for eating from the tree. Eating from the tree brought punishment with death. Women have difficulty in childbirth, raising kids, right? The snake gets punished. Everyone gets punished, right? You have to make a living, right? Everyone gets punished, right? That's a different thing. Coming into the world, you have to be in the world in order to have a portion of the world to come. It doesn't work otherwise. You have to be in this world. Why? Because that's what God says. That's what God says. You want a portion of the world to come, the soul has to be in this world. Angels don't have to be in this world. Other spiritual forces don't have to be in this world. Souls have to be in this world in order to get a portion of the world to come if they do what they're supposed to do in this world. But it's not punishment for eating from the tree. That punishment is death and childbirth issues. That's a punishment for that. They heard reach such a high level, right? Shem meditating because they serve the way not being revealed to anyone. Could be. That could be. But again, with all the possible explanations, I'm not saying one is any more valid than the other. With any of these explanations, it's still very hard to understand at their level. At their level. That's it. But again, you got to remember one thing: the closer you are to the king, you get burned. So they were very close to the king, and for whatever reason, for most people, wouldn't have necessarily been an issue. Maybe for certain things, except going the holy of holies, that would be an issue, right? Other things might not have been as big of an issue, but for them, it was much bigger issue. All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Mike Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or OrthodoxConversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on the Q&As, ethics of our fathers, book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, RabbiChaimKaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHIMCOFFMAN at gmail.com. Wish everyone good.